America is celebrating a massive win for gun rights after the November court decision. But what almost nobody realizes is that this ruling didn't just expand your freedoms, it quietly rewired the entire legal landscape in ways that could destroy you if you're not paying attention. Everyone's talking about the rights gained, but almost nobody is talking about the new traps, the hidden rules, and the razor-thin boundaries that now sit beneath those very freedoms. Because these 10 rule changes didn't just open doors, they built landmines around them. And one wrong step could cost you your firearms, your freedom, and your entire future. This ruling shocked the nation, but the real shock is what's happening after the headlines faded. These changes are already being used in courtrooms, police stations, and investigations across the country. Gun owners who think they're safer now are actually walking directly into legal quicksand without even knowing it. The government has less power on one side, yes, but on the other side, prosecutors, judges, and law enforcement have been given new leverage, new punishments, and new authority that nobody is warning you about. You think you're protected? Think again. Because the very rights you think you won come with consequences designed to be unforgiving. One mistake that used to be a slap on the wrist is now a felony. One misunderstanding that used to be a conversation is now an automatic arrest. One oversight that used to be paperwork is now years behind bars. Before you celebrate, stop. Listen carefully, because here are the 10 new gun rules created by the November court decision that nobody saw coming. And every single one of them can destroy your life if you don't understand them right now. When the November ruling dropped, most people thought it simply expanded gun rights. But what they didn't realize is that the decision didn't just shift the law, it redrew the battlefield entirely. Overnight, states, agencies, and lower courts were forced to scramble. And that scramble produced a series of silent rule changes that most gun owners still don't even know exist. And the most alarming part? These rules weren't passed through Congress. They weren't debated on national TV, and they weren't rolled out with public announcements. They were slipped into enforcement memos, quietly adopted through court interpretations, and in several states, enforced immediately. The first major shift is in background check interpretation, but not in the way people think. While the ruling weakened several federal restrictions, states instantly reacted by tightening their own definitions. It's not a new law, it's a new threshold, and it's already catching thousands of people. Something that used to be a minor administrative mix-up, like a mismatched address or an outdated license, is now grounds for an instant denial. Before November, the system leaned toward giving benefit of the doubt. After November, it leans toward blocking first, verifying later. Gun owners who haven't bought a firearm in the last year are walking into this wall without warning. Some are being flagged, some being delayed for weeks, and some are suddenly being told they're ineligible with no explanation at all. Then comes the second rule. Possession standard is tightened. Yes, you have more constitutional protection, but police departments are being told to enforce violations with absolutely zero leniency. A firearm left unattended in a car, something that used to result in a warning, is now considered negligent storage in several states, even without a theft. If your gun is stolen and you report it late, you're now assumed irresponsible. And late doesn't mean days, and in some places it means hours. This isn't written in any statute. This is policy guidance. Quiet, unannounced, deadly serious. And the ruling gave local authorities new justification to claim their strict interpretation is public safety responsive. The third rule is even more shocking: residency verification. For years, moving states while keeping your firearms was a gray area, often handled casually. Now, it's treated like a potential federal offense. If your residency isn't updated in time, if your ID doesn't match your gun paperwork, or if your old state still lists you as an active resident, you're flagged. Some gun owners have had police show up for routine follow-ups. Some have been asked to surrender weapons until verification is complete. And it's happening because lower courts are terrified of appearing lax after the ruling. They're choosing the harshest possible interpretation to avoid being overturned. Rule 4 is where things get dangerous. The definition of transfer has tightened dramatically. Letting someone hold your firearm at a range, handing it to a friend while you adjust your gear, loaning it for a hunting trip. Things that were normal, common, harmless, are being reclassified in certain states as unauthorized transfers. And because the court decision removed specific federal restrictions, states are now left defining the boundaries themselves. And they're defining them aggressively. A father letting his adult son borrow a pistol for a weekend hunt is now, in some states, considered an illegal transfer unless the son is listed as a temporary possessor. Something that used to be innocent is now a prosecutable offense. Not because lawmakers changed anything, but because judges and prosecutors did. Quietly, Rule 5 hits the majority of gun owners: training and certification recalibration. The ruling weakened several federal-level permit requirements, so states responded by overhauling their own. Many states increased mandatory training hours, some increased renewal frequency, others made qualification tests significantly harder. They're doing it to avoid being labeled too lenient under the new constitutional reading. But here's the catch. The new standards went into effect immediately, often without any transition period. That means thousands of gun owners who were fully compliant a month ago are now out of date without knowing it. Training certificates that used to last 5 years now last 2. Some permits that used to auto-renew now require in-person requalification. Nobody announced it. Nobody warned you. And gun owners are already being cited for carrying on an invalid or outdated certification, despite believing they were perfectly legal. Now we reach Rule 6, the one experts are calling the silent trap. Digital traceability expansion. After the ruling, federal databases were forced to restructure what they could and couldn't track. But instead of backing off, enforcement agencies shifted focus to digital side systems. Courier logs, shipping data, voluntary registration platforms, even store loyalty systems. They're not tracking gun purchases directly, they're tracking everything around the purchase. Ammo frequency, accessory patterns, repair appointments, even range memberships. All of this is being fed into profiling systems to identify elevated activity. And because these aren't technically gun registries, they bypass the protections the ruling reinforced. Most gun owners still don't know this monitoring exists, and that's exactly how the agencies want it. Then comes Rule 7, the harshest interpretation of intent in decades. Before November, many cases relied on actual misuse or clear misconduct. After November, prosecutors have begun arguing that intent can be inferred from behavior, meaning actions that look suspicious can be treated as criminal intent even without wrongdoing. Buying 2 firearms too close together, practicing rapid reloads, owning certain accessories. These behaviors are now being argued as intent indicators. And because the ruling made it harder to restrict ownership directly, prosecutors are compensating by focusing on intent-based charges, which are easier to argue and harder to defend against. A simple hobby can be framed as a threat. A common setup can be portrayed as preparation. One prosecutor even argued that a man's practice schedule implied future misuse. This is where the system becomes terrifying. Rule 8 builds on that danger. Anything modified is now treated as suspicious by default. Not illegal, suspicious. Optics, triggers, rails, compensators, braces, flared mags, everyday upgrades are being flagged as enhancement indicators. Again, not laws, interpretations. But these interpretations are already influencing arrests, already appearing in court filings, already being used to build cases where no law was broken. Gun owners who thought modifications were purely personal are learning the hard way that modifications now signal elevated intent in the eyes of enforcement.